Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs, false flag, terror attacks, Bill Gates, Henry Kissinger, New World Order, mind control, Bank of America stealing homes with cut and paste mortgage loans, police, state, taser guns, FEMA camps, man to run. Monsanto rules the food supply while Big Pharma dopes your mind. Prison system, profiteers, foundations, fund the fears, fund the evil through the years. The world's not as it appears. CIA smuggles drugs while Wachovia and Wells Fargo launder them, then give the proceeds to the owners of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now the IRS takes money out of every single check. Money created out of thin air and leave you with debt. They want to make you a serf, a slave to their demand. They want to take your life in every way they can. Fluoride, GMO, vaccines, chemtrails, United Nations genocide. The world they show us is not real. This is how they kill and steal. Rothschild, Bundy, Rockefeller, Club of Rome. On the Georgia Guidestones it's written in stone. Cut through the matrix, awaken to the lies. Do not be hypnotized. We are one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So Wayne, who made these miniatures?
Well, these are from David Munson 3D. He's does 3D graphic modeling, and what the these are part of
amazing.
There's actually about 3 of them. There's 3 of them. There's a third one and the third one has the Freedom Tower in it, and so it is. In the Fire Museum of New York, and they're there so that people can see what used to be there, what happened on the day of 9/11. And in fact, when you wonder, when you see some of the things like this being on display, and the way that it is on display, what you will wonder is if the people are in fact trying to get the message out in the best way that they are able to, and one of which is to put things on display. For example, in the Fire Museum of New York, and I think we'll see it in the Experts Speak Out documentary tonight, what you're going to see is a firearm, a gun, a pistol that is embedded in molten concrete. Why would they put this on display in molten concrete? Because you need 3,300 degrees Fahrenheit to melt concrete. They're there because, as near as I can tell it, they're there simply so that you can get the message out in the way that you are able to. You can't put it and say, well, this was molten concrete from the World Trade Center indicating the presence of thermite. Thermite's the only thing that could have done that. You're not going to get molten concrete from jet fuel fires at all.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Howard Nema from We Are Change, Connecticut, wearechangeCT.org, and we're sponsoring 9/11 Explosive Evidence Experts Speak Out screening, one of the first screenings of this new cut. We've done this before at the Silas Bronson Library in Waterbury, Connecticut back in September of last year with a longer cut. This is a shorter cut, more concise with less repetition, but very effective and powerful. And we're blessed to be joined here by having my good friend Wayne Costa, who will be, he's an engineer, who will be explaining the physics involved with controlled demolition and how what happened on 9/11 isn't exactly what as many things in this world are not exactly what they appear to be. So without further ado, I just want to give a shout out to TruthBroadcastNetwork.com, and I also do a show discussing these type of topics Monday through Thursday on TruthBroadcastNetwork.com. The show is called Truth Talk News. You can just Google it or tune in to TruthBroadcastNetwork.com. It's a alternative source of information. There's articles and other things there as well. And God bless you all. And now we have Wayne Costa from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth.
Thank you very much for coming out. It's a beautiful day, and I'm really honored that you've decided, not honored, I guess, that I'm really pleased that you've decided to spend the night here with us, learning about something that you can't hear from, you won't find in other venues. Thank you for coming. Now, my name is Wayne Costi. By the way, if you need to find where this is on Truth Broadcasting Network, just Google Howard Nema.
That's pretty much all you got to do.
That's all you got to do. But anyway, my name is Wayne Costi. I'm a registered professional engineer. I am one of nearly 2,000 architects and engineers that are now calling for a new investigation into the what we say the fraudulent. No, that's too loud.
Yeah, I just want to get everyone here.
Yeah. I'm one of nearly 2,000 architects and engineers calling for a new investigation into the fraudulent engineering reports about the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers on September 11th. Most people don't know that a third tower was destroyed on that day. But at any rate, I got involved in this many years ago, about 4 years ago, when I first saw the first version of a documentary about how the towers were built and how they came apart by architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. On the day of 9/11, I remember watching the television and I saw the buildings fall. How many of you remember where you were on September 11th? Yeah, everyone knows this one. It was a really traumatic event, really shocking. We spent the next week just in shock about the whole thing. But at any rate, it was really difficult to get my hands around what happened at the World Trade Center building. When I first saw, on the day of 9/11, I first saw the Twin Towers fall. What we saw was I remember seeing the top of the South Tower coming towards me, and I said, oh my God, we're going to have an 80-story building. And then I looked in absolute disbelief as the entire Twin Tower just unzipped all the way down to the basements, and I just could not believe it. And then shortly thereafter, the second tower did the same thing. And I said, I'm going to have to wait until I get a good explanation for this because I just can't believe what I saw. And over the ensuing years, nothing really kind of made a lot of sense as to how the buildings could have been destroyed that way. So I rested, even as an engineer, trained in all this stuff, I rested uncomfortably with the official story that fires in the planes, followed by fire, resulted in a complete and total catastrophic destruction of the buildings. I kept that as my understanding until about 2007, when I saw this first documentary by architects and engineers, where a lot of the evidence was put forward in a scientific kind of a really physical-based manner, and I began to become much more understanding of what actually happened to the buildings. And so I'm really understand what many people who haven't yet come to terms with what actually happened on September 11th are going through it, and what they have to go and what they have to deal with as they come to terms. And we'll see some of that discussion. We'll see some of that discussion in this documentary. Now, when you spend as much time and effort doing this type of work, you have to ask yourself why you do this. And I'll tell you that I personally have 4 reasons for being in front of you today. First, I feel that I'm a witness to a mass murder in which the person who pushed the button is still out there. Secondly, I'm an engineer, and after studying these buildings, when I'm told that these are gravitational collapses, it's an affront to me as an engineer. Third, there's a greatly villainized community in this country, and it's the Muslim community, and all I ever simply say is the story is a lot deeper. And the last, and probably the most important reason, is that if this story can be hidden in plain sight, not discussed anywhere in the media, what else is not being discussed and disclosed? And it's a call for you all to pay more attention to what's going on in the world around us. Now, so that's kind of a little bit about my journey. This documentary has been in the works for about 3 years now. It took about 2 years to get to the first version of it, which was released on the 10th anniversary last year of September 11th. And it was a bit longer and more redundant, and it's taken the ensuing next year to kind of tighten this up so that it is as compact as you can get. This is the shortest version. It's now 88 minutes. We've been able to reduce it by a little bit. We hope that you'll really, I'm afraid that enjoy is not quite the right word. I think that I hope that you'll get as much out of it as I have. There's a lot of information. 43 of our professional petition signers are in here talking about why the official story cannot be true. And after we're done with this, because I do a lot of talking about the issues, presenting about it, I'll be glad to spend about an hour answering any questions that you have about the more or less technical issues associated with this. So I guess with that, I guess it's we'll hit the start button here. Thanks.
What we really need to know is how those buildings came down.
My husband Steve was 48 years old when he was killed on September 11, 2001. He was in the North Tower on the 104th floor. There are so many unanswered questions, and that's scary to me. We never had answers. Nobody ever stopped to have a scientific investigation. A scientific investigation. A scientific investigation.
Tribute lights in the New York skyline. An annual memorial to the lives lost on 9/11. Yet there's still more light that needs to shine, revealing truths that their family members deserve to know. September 11th, 2001, a day that changed history. 4 planes went silent and off course. 2 of those planes crashed into the World Trade Center Twin Towers. Several columns were severed, and the jet fuel ignited fires that spread over several floors. About an hour later, millions watched in shock as both towers were suddenly and rapidly destroyed, killing almost 3,000 people, for whom truth and justice may have yet to be served. Hi, I'm Richard Gage, AIA, licensed architect of over 20 years and member of the American Institute of Architects. I'm founder of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, a non-profit organization of well over 1,000 technical and building professionals. According to official government reports, the fires weakened the structural steel framing of both twin towers, leading to sudden, progressive, and total collapses. Unknown to most people, a third steel frame high-rise, World Trade Center 7, was also destroyed. Critical questions have been raised by more than 1,500 architects and engineers about the official explanations for the destruction of all 3 of these buildings. Along with more than 10,000 other concerned individuals, these professionals, collectively comprising more than 25,000 years of experience, have signed our petition. They're calling for a new investigation into the destruction of these 3 World Trade Center high-rises. This call is based on evidence that reveals a very different destruction scenario than reported by government engineers. This includes abundant scientific forensic data and eyewitness testimony that was omitted from the official reports. You'll be seeing this evidence and hearing from dozens of these technical experts, including many who are among the top in their respective fields.
I claim they're not doing science at all. They're doing propaganda or publicity or whatever they're doing, but it's not science. It's not playing by the rules of science.
We at AE 9/11 Truth take President Obama at his word in his affirmation to the American people during his inauguration. How do we accomplish this? We've done our best by using the scientific method, examining the evidence from the World Trade Center and developing unbiased conclusions from unbiased experts in their fields. As coherent sets of scientific facts are brought into focus by the experts, the data, and the witnesses in this film, you'll come to a much greater understanding of the events of 9/11 and will be in a position to draw your own informed conclusions. Of course, the ones still most affected by the events of that tragic day are the family members of the victims lost on 9/11. Several have asked to appear in this documentary. Although our focus will be primarily technical, we are deeply moved and honored to give them the opportunity to speak directly to you. Now, let's hear from the AE 9/11 Truth professional petition signers, who will share with you what conclusions they came to. Among these experts are high-rise architects and engineers in the fields of structural design, material science, chemistry, fire protection, metallurgy, as well as physicists, explosives experts, and demolition technicians.
If we believe that fires brought down the World Trade Center buildings on 9/11, this is extremely troubling for those of us in the design professions, architects and engineers, even physicists.
Buildings just don't behave like that.
There was no hesitation. There was no hesitation when it was to hit story after story.
The tops of the buildings were basically disintegrated.
The fact that it was all reduced to rubble and powder just did not make sense at all.
Our whole society is being led to believe that these fundamental laws of physics, hard science, don't apply anymore. And that's, I think that should frighten all of us.
Also, psychologists, therapists, and counselors, along with theologian David Ray Griffin, who have a deep understanding of the personal issues associated with 9/11, will explain why it is so difficult for us to come to terms with the reality of these events, and learn how we can help ourselves and others with this difficult yet vital responsibility.
We were confident, we felt secure, and all of a sudden that security collapsed.
So the question becomes why? Why is it that people have so much trouble hearing this information?
When your beliefs are challenged, fear and anxiety are created.
We don't have leaders who would do those things.
I believe that to be the kind of country that we think we are, we have to face some of the things that are not as we think they are.
We need the truth in order to heal.
Trade Center Building 7 looms above the site of its original. Building 7 was a 47-story high-rise, not hit by an airplane. Yet, it was the third modern steel-frame skyscraper to collapse rapidly and symmetrically on 9/11. It was a football field away from the North Tower and sustained minor damage from falling debris. Building 7's precipitous collapse was blamed on normal office fires.
I'm Steve Barish, founder and president of Barish Architects and Associates, Inc., a 33-year-old architecture planning and engineering firm. One of the things that really interested me is how quickly the Tower 7 fell. It fell within 7 seconds approximately from top to bottom. This building was built in the mid-'80s and met all the codes at the time.
From about 1965 until about 1985, most of my experience has been in high-rise, multi-story steel buildings. NIST would have us to believe that these was a typical office fire, scattered office fires, if you will, that brought this building down. Since the mid-'60s, I've tried to follow high-rise fires because they're something we worry a lot about as we design these buildings. And I'm not aware of any high-rise building that have come down as a result of fires.
I first became aware of the problems with the official account of the collapse when I saw a DVD online from Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. They pointed out various problems with the official story, and ones that caught my attention were the rapid failure of the connections in order for the building to come down at the rate that it did.
I've been involved in many large projects, including overseeing several high-rise buildings ranging in size from 14 stories to 40. Over the course of 20 years, I'm mainly called in to help with very large, difficult projects. When I watched Building 7 collapse, it basically left no doubt in my mind that something was wrong. Building 7 had not been hit by a plane.
The coup de grace for me was when I found out that Building 7 had collapsed later that day. And when I saw Building 7 come down, to me, the fact that it looks like a perfect controlled demolition of an intact building I mean, that's what I call a smoking gun.
Was the structural steel from World Trade Center 7 preserved, documented, analyzed according to standard procedures for investigating engineering failures?
Hailing the collapse study as an assessment rather than as an investigation has allowed valuable evidence in the form of the tower's structural steel to be destroyed. It is the steel that holds the primary key to understanding the chronology of the events resulting in the collapse.
When did you become aware that the steel from the World Trade Center was being sold off?
I think it was on the order of a week or so before we arrived on site on October the 5th, I believe.
So in other words, the city was selling or was disposing of material within 2 weeks of the actual event?
I believe I was the first one to find out that the steel is being recycled. New York Times reporter Jim Glantz told me 2 weeks after the collapse, and I tried to contact city, and also New York Times reporters tried to make sure we can have access to steel to do the research. It was not happening.
I just think there's so much that has been lost in these last 6 months that we can never go back and retrieve. And it's not only unfortunate, it's borderline criminal.
400 truckloads per day of material were taken away from the World Trade Center site and sent to China for recycling.
There were laws violated in the destruction of that evidence. And for the American Society of Civil Engineers to ignore those events is extremely disturbing and is a violation, in my opinion, of their professional code of ethics.
It was contrary to the way all investigations are done. If an airplane crashes, they seal off the entire area, nobody touches anything, they move it to a secure location, and they reconstruct an aircraft.
Normally, when you have a structural failure, you carefully go through the debris field, looking at each item, photographing every beam as it collapsed and every column where it is in the ground, and you pick them up very carefully and you look at each element. We were unable to do that in the case of Tower 7.
You can't do science when you are deprived of the evidence and when your hypothesis is the least valid instead of the most likely. When the most likely hypothesis in the case of Building 7 wasn't even mentioned. This is not science. It's trying to prove preconceived ideas.
Was a proper investigation performed that might have revealed the use of accelerants or explosives in World Trade Center 7's destruction?
NIST concedes that they found no evidence for explosives. So then we asked them, well, did you look? And they said, no, we did not look for explosives or residues of explosives.
The American Society of Civil Engineers was brought into this investigation early on. They did a very superficial investigation of the site. They issued a report without any significant forensic examination.
National Fire Protection Association Guide number 921 calls for saving the evidence and being prepared to justify why you wouldn't. It also calls for testing for accelerants and explosives when high-order damage is involved. NIST did not do this.
The minimum explosive charge, the 9 pounds, required to fail critical column IE-79 would have produced a pressure wave that could have broken windows in the north and east, resulted in a sound level of 130 to 140 decibels, which is the equivalent sound to a gunshot blast. There were no witness reports of such a loud noise.
There were all kinds of firefighters and civilians that were reporting explosions.
You heard explosions, like boom. It's like a distinct sound. It's not like when the compression, like boom, 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 like floors that were dropping and collapsing. This was a boom, and like you felt a rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something.
Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor.
Okay, all right. Here, look.
You want to call your mother or something?
Just the fact that there were explosions means they need to be investigated. Terrorists used explosives at the 93. We had witnesses to explosions. We have audio recording of explosions. We have overwhelming evidence that there were some explosive events. The manual gets into thermite, and if it says if you have melted steel or concrete, which we had on 9/11, and there's videos of it, and people can see it, we should test for it. It says when you have melted steel or concrete, you test for thermite. So the fact that they're not testing for it is crazy.
Keep your eye on that building, it'll be coming down.
Building's about to blow up. Going back. We are looking back. There's a building about to blow up.
We had 3,000, Americans murdered, and we had the first 3 high-rise and steel collapses. We have all these reports of explosions. We have the history of terrorists using explosives. It's absolutely ridiculous that there's no excuse for it. It's criminal, in my opinion. The national standards are very clear. We have preservation of evidence. We have spoliation of evidence. There's all kinds of, basically, standards that you don't destroy evidence. We don't have the real story on what happened because there wasn't a proper investigation done.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed because of fires fueled by office furnishings. It did not collapse from explosives or from fuel oil fires.
As reported by the New York Times, engineers were baffled by the collapse of Building 7. Since no steel frame high-rise has ever completely collapsed due to fire, how are we to understand this mysterious event?
High-rise buildings simply do not collapse due to fire. There has never been until 9/11 an experience where a high-rise building that was steel frame completely collapsed. There have been fires burned longer in similar structures without any collapse.
In this test, done by British Steel in 1995, a large amount of typical office furniture was burned to see what would happen to the heavy steel beams that supported the ceiling.
It's not that it melts in a fire. In fact, normal fires are not hot enough to melt steel. Even if you were, for example,
to use an unusual fuel like kerosene, you cannot achieve temperatures hot enough to melt steel. But what happens is it starts to lose its strength. And as it loses its strength, it starts to sag.
This was the largest test of its kind ever conducted. It showed how unprotected steel can be distorted, even by a normal office fire. But as is typical in steel buildings, the structural beams only slowly and progressively warped and sagged. There was no chance of a sudden collapse.
In my previous career as a firefighter, normally you'd never be afraid to go into a Type 1 building because they're not combustible, and you would just charge at it and put the fire out. Never in my training were we ever taught that these type of buildings could just collapse in on themselves. There's definitely much more going on than just fire.
The World Trade Center 7 building reminds me of the Meridian Bank building in some ways in Philadelphia. The Meridian Bank building is a 38-story skyscraper that burned for 18 hours in 1991, suffered extensive damage from the fire, but did not collapse.
NIST tells us that this collapse mechanism, starting with thermal expansion, that worked its way upward and outward through the building, in a matter of seconds, there's not enough time for the building to collapse the way that NIST tells us it collapsed.
NIST claims the fires were very large, very hot, and long-lasting, when in reality, observation, which has been researched by many people, shows these fires did not last very long. They were not in the locations where NIST claims they were at given times.
I'm a fellow of the American Institute of Architects. For the 40-plus years that I've been practicing architecture, I have designed a variety of buildings from small houses to high-rise office buildings. Some of the high-rises that I've worked on are 1 shell and 2 shell here in Houston. I was project manager for a 22-story office building in Akron, Ohio. Later in the day, when World Trade Center 7 collapsed, they had already showed us pictures of a few fires in that building, and I mean, they weren't even raging. And how could that cause a building to collapse as if it were imploded? Couldn't happen.
According to lead investigator Shyam Sunder of the National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST, World Trade Center 7 collapsed at free-fall acceleration for more than 100 feet of its fall. What does the speed of the collapse reveal to us?
Essentially, in less than 7 seconds, Tower 7 came down upon itself.
It's just like taking your car keys out and just dropping them. That's how fast the building came down, for over 100 feet. And the only way you can get that is when there's zero resistance. And so what we're looking at is a building just coming straight down, falling right through itself with zero resistance. Buildings don't have zero resistance, which is why you feel comfortable walking into a building.
This building had 40,000 tons of structural steel in its structural system, and that is intended to keep it from going anywhere.
I'd heard people say, well, it came down at free fall or close to free fall and so forth, so I decided I'd measure it myself. I had a simple tool at the time called a physics toolkit, which allowed me to take a video and put a dot on each frame to follow the motion of things. And I realized that it's actually coming down at free fall, pretty much dead on the acceleration of gravity. Well, NIST, in their final draft, was saying that the building came down with 40% longer than free fall time.
How can such a publicly visible, easily measurable quantity be set aside?
A free fall time would be an object that has no structural components below it. There was a structural resistance that was provided in this particular case.
He was making our case for us. You can't have free fall when there's support. And in the final report, they modified it, and they actually admitted there was a period of free fall involved. But they never changed their model. Like, how do you all of a sudden allow for free fall when they just got done explaining how it couldn't have been in free fall?
A single email that you can click on. So it keeps you informed. Second, truth is
told to us, then the perpetrators of that are still at large to continue to do something else again. They seem to be leaning toward there's some kind of government involvement. I don't know that. It's very suspicious. If the truth isn't known, these people are at large and can continue to do what they're doing, whatever their agenda is. So in other words, it can happen again, anywhere, anytime, some different form.
The comment is basically that this could be the prelude to something else. I will, while architects and engineers doesn't get into, has not yet adopted the issues of what happened in Oklahoma City and the Oklahoma City bombing. There's a new documentary that came out recently that seems very credible, called A Noble Lie, and it basically kind of points out that the story that we know about what happened at Oklahoma City in 1995 isn't the right story. Something else happened. In addition, many of the investigators for the Oklahoma City bombings were also involved in the engineering and forensic reports for the World Trade Center tower. So
what a shock!
So there's something to the comment that something else is going on. I will also point out that one of the things that I ask people to do is to talk about 9/11. It's something that's typically kind of a subject people try to avoid. And if you are called a conspiracy theorist or something like that, simply say, did you know that there's nearly 2,000 architects and engineers calling for a new investigation? That's nearly 30,000 years of cumulative professional experience. Shouldn't you at least know about that? And if you want to know where the conspiracy is, it's this conspiracy of silence. And that's not something that happened 10 years ago. It's something that's ongoing now. In the media, with the exception of some of the really commendable comments that have been in the newspaper lately where architects and engineers have been mentioned, there has been a virtual blackout on the fact that there's all these architects and engineers saying that there's a problem. So I ask people to talk about it, and when you get pushback, just say, ask the architects, and we'll take it from there, I guess. In the back?
Yes, going back to that gentleman's sort of question about what would they gain or, as a result of doing this. Well, there was a document written by the government called the PNAC document, Project for the New American Century. It was written in about 1999 and updated 6 months to a year, maybe just before the events of 9/11. And in that document it stated that the United States, it was also called, I think, Rebuilding America's Defenses or something. Well, it has all the intentions of attacking every country that's been attacked since 9/11.
That's right.
Syria, Iraq, Iran's on the list. I think Venezuela may be on the list.
They are.
They've actually, it said in one point in that document that it would be very hard to sell a war in the Middle East to the American people without a new Pearl Harbor type incident. And incidentally, on that day of 9/11 happened, George Bush said, this is our new Pearl Harbor. And I begin to wonder, maybe there's a war going on still. That's what I'd like to say to the gentleman. Nobody talks about it because the elections are on, the sports are on. Our military is killing people all over the world, one country after another. I can't count how many places we are since and as a result of the lie of 9/11. I mean, it is, they say God bless America, but why would he?
Thank you for your comment.
We're going to take it back, brother. We're going to take it back.
What I want to point out is that the Project for a New American Century was not written by the United States government. It was by influential people, some of which who became involved in the government. But
they're called globalists.
That's a kind of another issue, I guess. There was someone else.
New World Order.
First of all, Mr. Cosley, thank you for coming out. My question, a couple I have here to deal with thermite demolition theory. Basically, how many private companies and or federal administration, and then obviously into the Bush administration. And now, with that theory in mind, with the thermite demolition, the immensity of the project that would have to be taken on to wire 3 buildings and to span, and now without alerting tens of thousands of people that work in these buildings. So basically, my question is basically just have to deal with the thermite, and how accessible is this? Is it worldwide? Is there different types of thermite, or is this very rare material?
Well, first of all, certainly the ingredients are quite readily obtainable. They're iron, oxygen, and aluminum with a little bit of sulfur. Because there's evidence of that. Who has the capability of putting this together? It's probably only a handful of high-tech labs around the world that can do that. So it's because this is built up from a nanoscale. Kevin Ryan, who was in the video, has actually made some nanothermite, and he shows how he does it as a chemical process where you titrate things out and stuff, and he can make some small amounts of it. But the material itself is relatively hard to make. Every day